David Lowe is a composer and music producer whose work comprises mainly of music for TV and radio. Just a few of the themes he's composed include BBC News, The One Show, Grand Designs, Countryfile, and the list just goes on and on and on. And he's on the line with us here today. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm great, Toby. How are you doing today?
Yes, I'm doing great. I'm not normally up at this time, but it's great to be here.
Excellent. Nice to say hello to everybody listening as well.
Yeah, of course. So it's interesting because before you went on to make the BBC News theme, you actually started out working for the BBC, not as a music person, but just as a kind of, what were you, an intern or something?
Yeah, way back when. I suppose it was even before they had interns and things, but I was like 18, still at school, and I was like really interested in broadcasting and radio TV, and I was talking to a teacher about it, and he knew somebody at the BBC. He said, "I'll give him a ring," because they have guys your age in to help out the weekend. So lo and behold, he phoned him up, and in I went, and I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant, learned all about radio production, and because we were at a place called Pebble Mill in Birmingham, it was this big broadcasting centre for the BBC, and they did TV shows there, big network TV shows. They did like a daily magazine show. They had radio studios, music studios, so it was just a brilliant place to be. And I just knew from the minute I walked through the door, this is where I want to. This is what I want to do. So it was a great start.
Yeah. And did you have a music bug at all when you worked at the BBC at that time?
No, I suppose I'd always had tunes floating around in my head, like as a kid and stuff. Music had always been there, and I'd doodled around on the piano, and I always had that dream of, like we all do, of getting a hit in the charts, whatever it is, being in a band. But I didn't take it seriously. I just thought that's just pretty much what everybody is the same, So. I really focused on the radio and the TV thing, and I learned all about sort of sound editing and production and mixing, and then I started making little jingles up using sound effects and stuff and putting those together, and then I started dabbling around. I did a couple of little music jingles as well, but nothing too serious. So it was more about the sort of creative use of sound, I suppose, when I started, and I just found that I really I just took it, I just loved it, and just really took to it in a big way, and so the music came after that, really.
Yeah. And do you remember what the first piece of music you ever composed was?
I do. It was great. In radio, I learnt all about sort of sound production, and I used to put jingles together and things. I spent hours in the studio after everyone had gone home, just sort of experimenting with sound effects like this.
Are you sitting comfortably?
Just mixing
5, 1,
mixing sort of sounds together.
4.
It was really good fun, and the technology, of course, then was just tape machines. There wasn't any sort of digital technology; it was all analog. So so I suppose the first tune that I wrote after working there, I sort of got into I started getting into music, and I went out and bought a synthesizer, and I thought, wow, this is great, and it was just at the time when the technology had started to come together, and you could actually put music together at home. And I got this very basic multi-track recorder that used to be on a little cassette 4-track thing, and that was like a revelation. So I started putting songs together like this. So the quality still sounds all right. Even that was done, I think, sort of like 1983 or something like that. But and it was all like, I was really into like Vangelis and all like flowery, synthy stuff. So that was great fun.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, before you went on to work on the BBC News theme as well, you had a bit of a flirt with, I don't know if you'd call it pop star because you were more behind the scenes, but you definitely had a hit single with the band Touch and Go in the song Would You?
That's right, yeah. So I'd sort of like been, I did my first theme tune commissioned for telly in 1983, I was like 24 basically, and I thought this is the way to go. So I was really set on writing theme tunes, and I just focused on doing that. And because I sort of was in the BBC working freelance anyway, I'd always meet lots of people that would obviously want music, so it was a really good place to be. So I sort of built up a catalogue of stuff, but I always had this dream of getting a hit into the charts, and doing something like that. And I got a little record deal with this record label called Oval Music, and we were putting ideas together. And then we talked about doing like a dance track, like a Latin dance track. And there's quite a famous Latin track called Tequila, which sounds a bit like this. So I started playing around with adding some trumpet to that, sort of came around, started playing with that idea, and it wasn't really working. And then we think, let's strip it all back and just have it sort of really, really minimal, and sort of build it up, and let's see if we can find some little samples to go with it. So I'd done a sort of documentary called The Science of Sex about sort of sexual attraction and all the biology and stuff, and one of the sequences they had this montage of people saying this.
I've noticed you around. I find you very attractive. Would you go to bed with me?
And all sorts of different people. And I'd done that a couple of years earlier, and I suddenly remembered it. I thought, oh yeah, there's that. I remember that. So it must have stuck in my head. And I went back to dig out the tape, and it was literally like before. You might not even remember, they were all VHS videotapes that they used to send us to work with the pictures. And I dug that out and plugged it in, and I ran it to this bit. I thought, yeah, that sounds great. So I literally sampled that vocal off the VHS tape, and I started adding it into the
I've noticed
over the
around.
Groove, and then I just sort of built the groove up with a bit of bass.
I find you very attractive.
And it was that made it really sort of work, the hesitancy. And I thought I'll build it up, and then the sort of punchline,
would you go to bed with me?
I'll just come in with a massive sort of huge trumpet thing. So I got this trumpet player up called a mate called Jim, who's really brilliant, and I said, Jim, can you just jam over these chords? So I played him that groove, and I said, just go and just jam, do some jazz riffs over it. So he came up with loads of little jazz riffs like this. So over that 4-bar. So lots of riffs, and then after he'd gone, I listened all the way through. I thought, picked out all his best little riffs, and then I found this one. I thought this is going to be the mother of all riffs, So I took four of his riffs and made this one mega riff, which was. So it's 4 separate little bits basically. It's like those 4 bits, and so you play them together, and you get that one riff. And I thought that's working really well. So I put that over the chords. I thought, yeah, that's working great, And I thought it still sounded a little bit like not edgy enough. So I changed the background chords to that, which is sort of minor chords, and then add it. So it makes a heck of a difference, and it just sort of like nailed it for me. And I thought, well, there you go, that's working. And so then I played that to my record company guy Charlie, and with all the.
Would you go to bed with me?
And he just went, congratulations, you just got your first top 10 single there, and it was like, wow, really? And he said, yes, that has definitely got something. And so then he went out, and it's obviously you need somebody to champion it, and he was brilliant, and he just went out and just saw loads of people, and eventually got a record deal with V2 Records, and yeah, so 9-10 months later after writing it, it got to number 3 in the charts, which was an amazing experience.
Yeah, were you surprised that it managed to do so well?
Well, Charlie, the record company, he always had faith in it, and more than me, really. I thought, no, it's just not it's not going to happen, you know. And it was, but he had absolute faith, and he said, no, it will happen. And you know, we got to the point where we'd done it, and we got the record deal. So bit by bit, it was creeping closer, and. He said, you know, it really is touch and go whether it'll happen or not, and so that's why we called it touch and go, because it's touching, you know, whether it'll happen, and it's also the double meaning thing of, you know, which was all the whole sort of mood behind it, sort of cheeky double meaning phrases. So, and then it got to the sort of getting it onto top 10 in those days. You had to be on, as you still do now, you have to basically get onto Radio 1 and be on their playlist, and other radio stations had started playing it, but Radio 1 was still sort of hesitant about it. And then they finally said, oh yeah, look, we'll have it as our record of the week. Simon Mayo's show, his producer, they both really liked it. And so they said, yeah, no, we're going to play it as our record of the week. So, oh, yeah, you know, this is, oh, crikey, record of the week. So, got to that point, and then the week they were due to play it was like, we were sitting there waiting, and then they said, this is the record of the week, it's you too. You know, so they basically, right at the last minute, they'd sort of changed their mind. And so it's like, oh, no. And then the second week, they said, no, we're going to play it next week, and then they played something different. So we basically sort of almost given up hope then, and then finally they said, no, we're definitely playing it next week. So all the way through, it was really sort of, you know, we just didn't know whether it was going to happen or not. And then as soon as they started playing it, it started snowballing, and then the rest is history, really. And it literally was like a snowball, and it just turned into this bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So it was an amazing time.
Yeah, definitely. Not long after that, you went on to work on what's probably your most famous composition, which is the BBC News theme. How did you get approached to work on that?
Well, that was the year after the single came out. So it was a pretty, you know, some people have their golden time, I think, and in a way that was probably mine. You know, that where all the hits are happening in one go, and so I did the single, and then the following year, I was just approached by the BBC and said, "Do you want to? Are you happy to be on the short list of composers that we're going to consider to rebrand the BBC News?" And I was like, let me think about that. Yeah, you know, took about, and so yeah, it didn't take much. So I said, yeah, obviously that'd be absolutely amazing. I'd be completely honoured. So, and then we got narrowed down to a short list, and I went to meet Martin, who was the creative director, and he explained what the whole thing was about. And they said basically up until that point, all the BBC News shows had all got different theme tunes, and they all looked a bit different, they all sounded a bit different. And what he wanted to do was create this one single brand sound and brand look for the BBC News. Yeah. To bring it into the new millennium, you know, into the 2000s. And so that was the whole plan. And it was creating a look and a feel and everything. And so he said, and I want the music to be instantly recognisable and to be completely different to any of anything you've ever heard before. It's got to be completely different, and it's got to be, you know, unique and distinctive, and above all memorable, you know. And as soon as you hear it, you've got to sort of instantly know what you're listening to. And so that was the brief, and so we went off, and I came up with a couple of demos and sent those in, and I thought, oh no, he would definitely not got the job, you know. The demo, I think I've got it here somewhere. Let's have a look. I'll play the original demo for the BBC News. So, and I just thought, no, I mean, it's completely different to what they got, but I wasn't convinced that it was going to win the job, you know. So, but lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, they phoned me up and said, "Oh, Martin wants to work with you as the composer on the news job." You know, I was like, "Oh, wow, incredible!" So I had to go then for another meeting, and then he explained it all in more detail. And he said, "I want a really distinctive sound, instantly recognisable, instantly memorable. That in the first second, no matter how you use that sound, because it's got to be on the radio, it's going to be on TV, it's going to be in Scotland, it's going to be all different places, and they've all got to have a different feel and a different approach, but it's got to be instantly recognisable. And then we were talking about sounds that he liked, and one of them was the pips, which is that sound of which we all know, obviously. And the BBC's been using that. Next year, it's the 100th anniversary of the BBC. Can you believe it? 100 years. And that sound was at the very start of the BBC, and it was from the Greenwich Observatory. And they basically connected two electric electrodes to the pendulum at Greenwich because that was Greenwich Mean Time, was obviously the world's time clock, the most accurate. And so when the pendulum swung, it would hit the electric thing, go beep, 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 and they converted that into a sine wave, and that was the sound of the pips. And so the BBC had been using that for years, and Martin said, the pips is a really good example of a sound that is very distinctive. And I thought, well, maybe we could use the pips but add a dance beat to it, it'd be really different. And I was thinking of this in my head as we were chatting, and then I'd build it up and add a bass line to it. And then he said, oh, well, I'd like some sort of drama and it's got to have sort of drama and tension a bit. So I thought big drums does that trick, so I did those. And so I was thinking all this in my head as we were talking, and he said, can you come back on Friday? And this was on a Wednesday. He said, can you come back on a Friday and play some ideas to the BBC team? And I'll introduce you as the composer, and then, just bring in some initial ideas and see how we get on. So I was thinking, I've got a day to do it, So I sort of rushed back home, thinking, is that idea, is that too crazy? Is it too mad? And I thought, no, I couldn't think of anything else that had that same, that was strong enough, really. The thing about that was it was a sort of distinctive idea, it wasn't just a tune or anything, it was just it was an idea. So I thought, no, that's going to be the one. So I sort of put it together when I got back on the Thursday, and then did all the layers, added some nice string chords underneath. So it's really like very, very minimal. It's basically starts from that. There's only 4 main layers. So there's the drums, the bass, the big drums, and then the strings. And so it's quite sort of minimal, really, but it sounds big, And I was thinking, that's sort of working. And so I took that down to the BBC team, and Martin introduced me, and I played the idea. And they just looked at each other and went, I think you've done it. That's it. Wow. That's the one. That's absolutely perfect. Don't change it, And it's like an incredible moment, That was the start of it, really. And so from that basic sort of idea of the pips and the beats per second and the bass line, those are the core elements that I've used for the last 22 years. And all the other versions that I've done, the pips are always the thing that give it that identity.
Yeah, and of course there are variations of the theme as well, because you've got the headlines and the main titles, and of course the countdown as well. Yeah,
that's right. So you got the headlines like that. So and that's on a sort of running loop, which I think is 4 minutes worth, and you can trigger it any time you like. So when you finish the headline, you can trigger it again, and even though the breaks aren't that musical, not in time, it gives it a sense of urgency and sort of drama, which is great because it's quite random. So, and there's little tags that go on the end of that, so they do a headline, talk like this over the headline, and then there'd be a tag on the end. So there's lots of little elements. And so, we put that idea together, and then we were putting the tracks down for the news channel, which used to be News 24. And then right at the end of the afternoon, they said, we need this, one more thing. We just need this minute countdown that we're going to use at the top of the hour, which we use as a sort of device to get us back to zero again. So if they're running, they can play a minute's worth, and if they're overrunning, they can play 5 seconds or whatever. So it's a thing to always get back to the top of the hour, and they got some graphics to go with it, and they said it's just going to be like a clock counting down to 0. Can you do a piece of music that's a build up, to getting to 0 that we can fade in at any time? So I thought, okay, all right, and then I thought, okay, go, you go off and have a cup of tea, and I'll see what I can come up with. And so I just literally put a groove down like this on a loop of a sort of electronic samples going on, and then built up a series of chords that take you right up to the top of the hour, but everything works under that one single note of the pick. So the pitch stays the same, but the chords build up underneath it, which is always a really nice effect. And so that was the sort of countdown. And it started, it wasn't really a big thing when I did it. It was just another part of the package. But now, of course, that's become the sort of iconic part of the whole thing, which is I've done lots of different versions over time, and each one's have got a bit more sophisticated, and started adding more sort of melody to it. So it's the same chords as the very original, but just arranged and produced over the years.
Yeah, I was going to mention, because of course it has evolved over the years, how often are you called back to progress it?
I think we've done it, I think it's about 5 times, I think, over the years, maybe, or even more possibly. The last one was in 2013, which was, so that's probably the longest that this one's been on without changing it. But and I did separate versions for like BBC World News and UK News. There were slightly different ones. So it evolved pretty much the first 10 years. There were quite a few different variations, and then we got to 2013, and they had a really big rebrand of everything. Then pretty much that's the one that stuck from then on, so it's quite interesting to do, because every time I do it I think, this is it, this is the ultimate one, and then they go, can you remix it? So it's trying to find something with a new one that keeps it, gives it the thing that everybody knows, but adding something that obviously makes it sound a little bit different and a bit more up to date, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and of course there's the different themes for the regional news as well.
That's right, yeah. So I think one of the interesting parts of it was trying to find a way of, once we'd done the main news, was trying to find a way of varying it but keeping it the same. It started off the regions, and then Scotland, Ireland and Wales, and it was a bit of a head scratcher for a while. It took quite a few days, not even days, a couple of weeks really, trying different things to come up with a way of making them sound different but still retaining the identity, and giving them an individual identity for each, like Scotland, Wales and Ireland, without being cliched, And in the end it was quite simple really. There was a band that I'd been listening to at the time called Faithless, and there was a track that they got called Take the Long Way Home, and I remember when I first started doing the news, that was quite inspiring, that track. I thought, I love the way they've got that sort of beat going, and sort of almost like not ravey things happening, but a hint towards that. So I thought I like all that all those sort of sounds, like those electronic sounds, and so I just literally grabbed a load of like rave samples basically and put them all together, and to create that sort of layer. And I then sort of just literally took the pips, and then for each different region and the nations, I just wrote a new tune effectively with the chords, but keeping all the sounds the same. So it was like the same band, but a different song, if you see what I mean. And that became the way to do it. I thought that's the way to do it. It's just keep all the sounds the same, all the instrumentation, but just change the chords underneath, and that'll give it the identity for each one. And once I'd sort of landed on that as the way to do it, then that's pretty much become the way that I do it all the time now.
Yeah, definitely. And the theme itself has become a bit of a phenomenon, really, because people have made all sorts of remixes of it and have danced to it, and just overall have thought it's a great tune.
I know, it's incredible. I'm thrilled. Obviously, every time that happens, it's such an exciting thing for me to, and it's just amazing that people have latched onto it so much, and some amazing remixes as well. The Dua Lipa one was absolutely incredible. So good, and just the way people played along with it, and the drumming Weatherman, and it's just been great. I mean, it's really a thrill to be sort of almost like part of the British sort of fabric of Britain, that it's become a sort of iconic thing that everyone knows is a really great feeling. And it's stood the test of time, so that there's a new audience coming up like you probably weren't even born when I first wrote it, but now it's part of your landscape and everything. So that is a really sort of thrilling thing.
Yeah, and would you say that the news theme itself is on par with the Pips now?
I think the Pips will always be iconic in a way, and I suppose it has become a sort of icon of the BBC in its own right, which is, for me, is absolutely amazing, because obviously when I started out, I was just worshipped. The BBC was an amazing institution, and it was all there ever was when I was a kid was the BBC and ITV, and the BBC was massive, for everybody in their lives.
Yeah.
And I was enthralled by it and wanted to work at the BBC. So in the end, to be able to create a sort of thing that's become part of an icon of the BBC is really an amazing feeling.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, you're not just the newsman, but you've done many other themes as well, including the One Show. So how did you come up with that one?
Okay, yeah, so the One Show, that was an interesting one. They approached me about that late on, actually. They were looking for a theme, and they really wanted to change gear at 7 o'clock at night. It was a new show, and they wanted to sort of, the news had been on and all the serious stuff, and now it was time to relax and put your feet up and go for the rest of the evening. They wanted something that really changed the gear of evening viewing. And at first they didn't ask me to do it because I'd done the news music. They were a bit worried that I'd sort of just make it sound too newsy, maybe. I don't know. But so they didn't approach me to start with, but then obviously they did. So and they said, can you put some ideas together? So I started throwing lots of demos in at them, thinking, sounds like a really great job. I've got to get this job. So I came up with some sort of ideas like this, for example. Oh, and this was another one. So these are all demos for the One Show, basically. And that one. So they all work as pieces of music, and but the producer, his name was Doug, he was amazing, and he said, no, it's not quite got it, and he kept talking about something that it's got to be about people, he said, I need it to be about people, and so we were getting quite close, and then he said, it's got to work at 7 o'clock at night, we know it's got to sort of work as that switch over. So I thought, what I'll do is I put a mock-up together of a junction at 7 o'clock, and so I came out the news, and so this is like you'd imagine it on TV at 7 o'clock.
Safety on holiday. Travelling abroad may come at a price. Get the real story tomorrow at 7:30. Now on BBC One, Watchdog.
So I put the sort of junction together like that, so they could hear what my demo would sound like in situ. And they said, "Oh, that's brilliant! That's given us a real sort of insight." They said, "Tell you what, you've got the gig, but we won't pitch it anymore," because there were other composers putting ideas in as well. And 2 or 3 other people. They said, "Well, you've got the job, but it's still not got the sound right, So then. He had another chat to them, and then he played me. He said, I've got this song that I really like, it's got a great sound, it's this one.
Would you go to bed with me?
So lo and behold, it was like, I said, oh, I did that. That's me, And he said, no way. And he said, can you just make something like that? Yeah. I love that sound, but can you make it about people? And then all the way through, I'd be going, people. And then suddenly I thought, hang on a minute, this is the most obvious thing. People, isn't it? So it's a choir or it's people singing. And so I thought gospel choir, would be great, and something really celebratory. And I got this sort of chord of gospel choir going, like that. So I grabbed that as a sample, and then I started adding the trumpet to it. Again, I made up I took the woodgie trumpet and made up a mega riff of lots of little bits of the do-do-do-do-do-do, and just added that to the choir. I thought, oh, that's working. And then so that's people and the trumpet that he likes. So I just started building that up. Drums. Bass line. Guitar. Oh, that's piano actually. And guitar, yeah, there you go. There's the guitar. So I built the tune up like that, and I played that to them, and they said, that's brilliant, we love it, but can you make the choir sound a bit bigger? So I said, yeah, no problem. So I got some real singers around. I got the gospel singers around. 4 singers came to my studio, and I played them that sound, and I said, can you sing that, And they said, what, have you got any words? And I said, well, try one, go one. So they went, and I said, yeah, that sounds good. So that's what they did. So put that over it. And so that's how that came together. And then I played that to them. They said, yeah, it's fantastic. Can we have more voices on it? And by that time, they'd sort of gone. So I thought, should I get them back? And I thought, no, I'm going to sing it. So I sang that one in the middle. That one there, that's me going, what? Which takes a bit of time to get to sing it, but so that was really good fun. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a Christmas version of the theme, isn't there? Did you work on that?
There is, yeah, there's a Christmas version. And what we did for that, there was this event going on, which was kids' choirs from schools all get together, and they have this mass choir sing-along with lots of children, individual primary schools practice the tunes, and then they all get together, and this was at the O2 Arena in Birmingham, and they all sing the same tunes together in this massive big thing. So there's like 8,000 kids, So I phoned up the musical director and said, is there any chance we could get the kids to go, what? And he said, yeah, that sounds really good fun. So I suggested it to the One Show team. I said, how about the biggest kids choir in the world going what for the Christmas tune? And they said, yeah, great idea. So they came up and they filmed a bit of it, and that's what we did. And it was the hardest thing was the BBC production assistant that came along had to get 8,000 signatures signed or contracts to the kids to allow it to happen, so we had boxfuls of contracts that he had to take back to the BBC, which is quite funny. But so yeah, that became the sort of the One Show Christmas theme.
Yeah, that's insane actually, because you're hardly going to be able to make out one child's voice, so it's mad.
I know, yeah, it's interesting, yeah.
And of course you did one of my favourite shows, Grand Designs, as well. That's
right, yeah. Funnily enough, Grand Designs, the day that I got the news, I played them the news theme like we were talking about earlier, and they said, yeah, that's the one. I had another meeting that day in town in London, and straight after pretty much the news meeting, and I went along to this other meeting, and I said, I just got the news music, and they were all like really excited. They said, oh, that's amazing. I said, but we got this, so we got a show, they said, for Channel 4, and it's all about people building their own houses and things, and it's their dreams come true, you know. So we want a bit of dream come true music and a bit of sort of. And so I was so excited. I almost like this, my head was buzzing, and I was as they were chatting, I suddenly thought, doobie 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 doo, tinkly bells and sort of waltz style, and almost Hollywood, you know, Disney-ish in a way. And so I went home and put that together, and literally that stuck. You know, the first idea I did for them, the Grand Designs, they liked it, and that stuck. It's had the same life. It was born the same day as the news theme, you know, and that's lasted the same time.
Yeah, definitely. That's incredible. I guess that era was definitely your golden age.
It was.
And of course, Countryfile you did as well. When was that?
Well, Countryfile is an interesting story because the very first theme I did for Countryfile was way back in 1988 when the programme first came out, and that was from Birmingham. And this was the original theme. That was the original theme for Countryfile back in 1988. And from then on I sort of did quite a few different ones for them over the years. This one was an update of that last one, and there was this one, and then this one, I think, completely barring sheep. A little bit more pastoral, that one. And then there was a bit of a lull, and then they came probably maybe 9 years or so, and then they came back to me in like 2007 and said, you know, we'd redoing the titles, and do you want to come up with a theme, you know? And I went to see the graphics guys, and they were really cool guys in Bristol, and they said, yeah, we've got these aerial shots. The whole thing's going to be like a kite flying over, beautiful aerial footage, and you'll always see the little kite triangle of the shadow, and that's going to be the sort of emblem of Countryfile, and you see it going over beautiful English countryside. So can you make it all about sort of like flying and being in the air and like really so this was the first sort of idea I put together, and they sort of wanted to be sort of obviously modern feeling and contemporary and stuff. And so we sort of working. Sometimes you don't get, quite often you don't get the idea straight away. It's an evolution. So I got the sort of sound of it, but I hadn't quite hit the sort of the main tune. So as it evolved, we got to this version, which is very close to how it ended up, but the tune's a bit different, if you see what I mean. And they were sort of liking that, and then it's like, can you work on it a bit more? So then it was, the tune emerged. So the backing and the instrumentation's the same, but I sort of came up with a melody. And there's a bit of fine tuning to that, and then so that became the theme, you know. And I think, was that 2007? I think it was. And then lo and behold, Countryfile moved from being on a Sunday morning, this little show, to Sunday night, you know, peak time viewing. And then it suddenly become this massive peak time show, which was really exciting. And then they said, can we make it sound a little bit more Sunday evening, you know, rather than sort of Sunday morning. So I was thinking more orchestral and strings, you know, pastoral sounding. So building that up as a theme. So you had the melody line over the top of that. So it's the same melody but a different arrangement. which is the magic of music, really, that if you get a tune, you can do it in a million different ways, and give it a million different moods.
Yeah.
But if you create a recognisable tune, it'll always sort of stand out, no matter how you do it. And that's always like a thrill when you get something that sort of works, to do it in different ways like that.
Yeah. And when you're writing these themes, is it the same process every time? Because I guess the BBC News theme was brought up in a very different way to how you would do something like Countryfile, right?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it always starts. Most of the best ideas, in a way, you think of them before you sit down and try doing them. You come up with the idea in your head, or what you want it to be, sort of thing, and then you sit down and do it. And some ideas can be completely formed before you even sit down, so all you have to do is put them together. And other ideas you've got half formed, and then but you know where you want to go. So basically it builds up like that. So fortunately, I've always, like I said, from when I was a kid, I've always had tunes buzzing around in my head. It's almost like, so coming up with melody lines never been too difficult for me. So that's why I pretty much like writing instrumental music, because it comes much more naturally. But like writing lyrics and writing songs, I find I can't do at all, So I find I'm in awe of people that can do that. But the tunes bit for me is something that seems to just flow naturally. Yeah. They just seem to pop out of thin air, and you just go, that's a nice one, we'll try that.
Yeah. And is it kind of annoying that TV themes, you don't really get enough time to do everything you want to?
I really like them, because they're like, you've got 30 seconds, well, they used to be 30 seconds, they're almost down to 15 seconds now.
Wow.
And sometimes even shorter, And the days of the old theme tune have sort of gone in a way, but I like the idea that they come up with like a mini pop song almost in 15 seconds, and it's like a build up and introduction. It's got to start and finish, it's got to hit you, it's got to be memorable, and you've only got that time to do it. And so I quite enjoy having those little nuggets of time, and little graphic sequences are just in themselves are just really good fun to do.
Yeah. And the fact that they've kind of shrunk in half over the years, is that because our attention spans are not what they used to be?
I think so. I think it's because production teams, obviously, they want to get you into the show really quickly, and they want to sort of keep your attention, So as more and more channels are developed and there's more choice, they want to sort of keep you glued, so they don't want to spend lots of time on a title sequence when they could be getting into the show. But having said that, if you watch your Netflix now or Amazon, there's some. It's almost changing back to how it was, and some really beautiful, like long title sequences coming back with really, really beautiful graphics, and a lot of them have got songs and vocals in them. So it's almost like changing. The art form has stayed in a way, and so they're bringing that back, which is great.
Yeah, although there is the skip intro button on Netflix, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But real fans don't do that.
Yeah. I think they're great. I love intro music. I've always loved title themes and introductions. I think they're just, they're great. They're just tiny little bits of tune and little mini art forms in themselves, and the graphics are always really interesting as well, so there's a little bit of entertainment. They're great.
Definitely. And is it weird watching TV shows that you've composed the music for?
Not really, because you're in work mode in a way, and you sort of, it's still a thrill, especially with the news, it's a thrill to know that everybody knows it, and everybody pretty much, like, from Boris Johnson to the Queen, or Joe Biden, everybody's heard it at some point, and then you can speak to anybody that I meet generally, and then when you tell them what you've done, they all go, they can't believe. So you're sort of anonymous until you tell them, and then it's always a surprise when they know. So it's a real thrill to have done that. But I suppose when I'm watching things, I'm listening more technically in a way. I'm going, is that working? Is it the right volume? Does it fit in? And I remember when the single came out, Would You? And it was first on Radio 1. I heard it in between two other records, and I was thinking, oh no, it's that, the EQ sounds terrible. I know. I think I was expecting a phone call from a BBC engineer telling me that they couldn't play it because the sonic quality wasn't good enough, So yeah, it's interesting that.
Yeah, but that could have been Radio 1's EQ that made it sound like that. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
And on a Monday night, of course, you've got the main news, the regional news, the One Show, and then Panorama. So you've got a good couple of hours of you. Yeah,
it's quite good fun. Yeah, Panorama was obviously I didn't write the Panorama theme tune.
Yeah, you weren't alive.
That was written by way back in, I think it was 1950s, by a French composer. And I think it was actually part of a soundtrack to a movie. It's called Aujourd'hui c'est toi, I think it's called. And so it was a soundtrack from a film, and that they'd obviously grabbed that little bit and used it as the Panorama theme, and that stuck, that's got to be one of the longest running themes on TV.
I think it's the longest running show of all time.
Right. That's incredible. So that's been really good, So again, that was quite a thrill to do that, and really enjoyable to put that one together.
Yeah.
And actually, it was just when I got my laptop computer as well, and I was working. I'd finally honed down all my technology down to using the laptop. So I remember I was mixing that on sort of Boxing Day night, sitting in front of my fire at home, on my laptop with a pair of headphones on, mixing the Panorama theme. I thought that's quite a nice place to be.
Yeah, definitely. So what's next for you? Are you working on anything that you're allowed to tell us about?
I've got a couple of interesting projects on the go at the moment. I'm doing some music for there's a big global conference in Glasgow about the climate, and they're having a big TV debate with all the world leaders. So I'm working right now on a piece of music for that, and I'm working on a new Arabic news phone-in show. And away from news, I'm doing I've just done an album of yoga music, which is an alternative thing, which we're going to release on Spotify and all the YouTube and all the channels, so if you don't really have to like yoga to listen to it, but it's sort of chill out music, so that's been really good fun. And that's the sort of first album that I've done that's been released for quite a long time, so that's quite exciting to see how that goes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, where are we able to keep up to date with all your work and check out everything you've done over the years?
Well, you can keep up to date with it. I'm a bit terrible, really. I don't update things that often enough. I really got to sit down and get on with it a bit more. But I've got a Facebook page, davidlowemusic.com, and I've got my website, www.davidlowemusic.com. So if I can get myself going, I'll start updating it a bit more and keep everybody up to date with what's going on.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for coming on the show today. It's been great having you here.
No problem at all. Really enjoyed it.